Our last speaker for the day, but one that I'm very excited about, is Bronwyn, who is about to come on stage, and she's from Agscent and is going to chat to us about cows and NASA. Very exciting.
Well, I reckon we've all been sitting down for absolutely ages, and how about while I put this down, everyone stands up and has a bit of a stretch. Because it's really hard to keep the energy levels up. Have a good stretch, move around a bit, change up the feel. All right, stretch right up. Okay, everyone, and now you can sit down. Breathe in and breathe out. All right, now I should just collect that sample because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about for the next 20 minutes. All right, so what you can see on screen, I'm Dr. Bronwyn Darlington. I'm a southern cattle person, but we had this great adventure in the north for about 10 years. Up at Broadmere Station, the family was there for 10 years, and I learned a lot about northern cattle, and I discovered that a great deal of what I learned was I'm probably a better southern cattle person, but what I understood was that to be able to do anything in the north, I needed to connect with those who are actually doing things in the north. And it was a wonderful experience to have. But the key thing that I want to talk about today is how all of this wraps together with how we breathe and why the picture before, I'm just going to jump back, that's on my Jersey cows. One day I was milking just at home. We're Angus and sheep, so about 1,000 Angus breeders, and we have about 14,000 sheep. And I was just constantly amazed how the home milkers, that they are so breathy, absolutely breathy. And one of the other things I do in life is I still teach at Sydney University, so I have an academic background, and my area is actually behavioural economics, which means I know why we spend money and what the psychology of this is, but it's really all about the future of technology and how we engage in that, right? So we've heard a lot about decision making today, and so I'm not going to cover what others have spoken about. But I was doing two things. One, I take executive MBA students to the US each year to look at the future of disruption and where technologies from one sector are going to disrupt another. I'll explain that in a second. And then I was looking at how new technologies are emerging for human health, for robotics, for space, for all these areas. And I come back to the cattle yards where I put the rubber glove on and I'm back out preg testing cattle the same way since the bloody pyramids. I thought, seriously, can I not connect these dots in a way that is able to help transform the sector? So what I'm showing you here is that there is a huge amount of technological change happening all over the world. And what's coming together is what is going to leverage the change. It's not just that there is a one technology solution for anything, it's the fact that once we start to understand generative AI, and I'd love you guys, everyone should play with that, understand what technologies are happening in space, which is all more funded than we are, and other sectors, when you pull that together, great opportunities exist. And I became really fascinated with the power of breath. Breath is a biological source, and I was doing this before COVID, that is a continuous biological evidence of whatever is going on in the body. And what I realised was there was a huge amount of money, not going to our sector, because a huge amount of money doesn't go into our sector for tech, but going into other sectors to understand human breath and be able to analyse that in a way that is able to predict disease, health states, ageing, to be able to modify what happens. And I'm like, gee, that's absolutely fascinating. What if I could do that with cattle? What industry critical problem if I could decode the breath of a cow bring? And everyone thought, man, you're a bit nuts about looking at breath, right? That's a bit weird. And then COVID hit. Everything changed. In addition to billions of dollars being put into fast-track breath and analytic technology, we all realised breath is really critical because it is a great indicator of what is going on inside anyone. We'd been starting to work at that stage with NASA. Now, we've created a platform, and I'm going to briefly talk about some of these things that we've created, but I want to make a much broader point about how I really think our industry needs to engage more productively and proactively in driving technology development, not just waiting till we get it. And all of this comes back to the point of being a primary producer and thinking, what is a decision I can make at the time, and driving that into the technology development that actually is coming. So we started with reproductive management because we're breeders, right? So that comes back to the rubber glove, the plastic glove and preg-testing the animals, and thinking, you know what, our biggest driver of productivity, as we've all heard, is breeding live animals. We don't finish, we breed, we move on. If I could do that better and faster, easier, more efficiently, and at a lower cost, and anyone could do it, that would change the game. It would absolutely change for the game for us. So what I started doing is thinking about, if we were going to do that, what would that look like? And how can I do that in a way that would really transform a whole lot of other things? Our sector doesn't realise the advantage it has. We every day deal with far more animals than human research can do to develop drugs and treatments for humans. And so what I started to do was look at how could I learn from what they're doing for humans and apply this to cattle, but who would I need to partner to do it with? So the first thing I had to do was get breath from a 600 kilo get out of my face cow in a crush, which was awesome really, because I didn't realise that when I first started this that they all breathe differently. Every single animal has a different breath pattern. So I had to invent a technology that could be on a single nose that you could do really quickly, because we don't want to keep the animals any longer in the yards than we have to, and to be able to get a breath that I could then actually analyse exactly the same way human breath is analysed. When we did that, we suddenly realised we could accurately predict pregnancy at 18 days post-insemination by just using breath. And we could do that and look at fetal ageing through pregnancy. It was a real breakthrough. But being able to do that with science is one thing, being able to do that in the yards is another. And the reality is that a lot of other sectors get money for this kind of stuff, and this is where COVID was really kicking in, and there was all this stuff about space tech, and I'm thinking, who's getting the money for this kind of breath stuff? This is really exciting. I thought, NASA's getting the money. Space is getting so much more money than we do. So I literally, sitting in my farm office, went onto the NASA patent library, because a bit of a dork, love science stuff, have science background as well, and realised that what NASA was doing was mapping for disease astronaut breath using these very cool, funky little nanosensors that you could put and breathe over, and you would be able to identify diseases over time. And I could see the molecules really similar in cows, because we're mammals. So for me, it's about taking convergent technologies and bringing them together. But it's not limited to cattle, even though we're here all about cattle. But the reason I started with pregnancy is because I can access cattle and I can do the trials ourselves. We have an advantage in being able to do that. Why was NASA interested in cattle is probably the question I get asked the most. Why NASA? What I did was to actually, when I inquired, so I literally went on the website for NASA and I filled out an inquiry form. And I said, have you guys ever thought about using this on cattle? Because of two things are very different in the United States than are in Australia. All the public institutions, NASA in particular, has to demonstrate the value of $1 spent on space in an industry of significance for the American economy. It's not about taking license fees, it's not about making a show about it. All they have to do is show that it benefits. And agriculture is a massive one in the US, obviously. What we also realised is they are busy trying to develop the technology for humans, and I could do far more, far faster by using cattle. So the government let me go over there, and so I could actually go and get cow breath from dairies, which was easy to do. It doesn't take me long to collect the breath. I'll show you how fast that is. And bring them back to the NASA labs, and I still don't know what the security guys thought when I take bags of cow breath out of the car and give them to the scientist who takes them inside of NASA, because they're running a trial with Stanford University on COVID. Because what we've created is like a digital camera for scent, for molecules. It's the neural network algorithms that tell us one thing versus another. So what we ended up doing was creating a partnership with NASA, where we now have a license for that technology for all agriculture use, not limited to livestock, to look and see where we can point that technology towards. So this is how it works in practice. Some of the cattle yards, you bring an animal in. I've always learnt a long time ago. We were the first MLA tech farm, and we had about 178 different types of technology. In the end, after the 3 years, we kept, I think it was 5 or 6, mostly because they were easy to prove the productivity benefit and that we were able to incorporate them into our system really easily. Darren's collected the breath, which comes from this. and then you put it on the electronic nose device, which has got the NASA sensors on the inside, but this is made so it's farm friendly. Rain, hail, shine, dust, you name it. We've collected endless samples in that. And within 10 seconds, it can tell you whether the animal is pregnant or not. And that can be pushed into any farm management software anywhere. The key point I want to make with some of this is that we've been able to do all this on the smell of an oily rag because guess what? That's what we as Australians do. We've been out saying that, okay, we're ready to go now, we're ready to manufacture this, let's get this to market, this is going to be great. We've got a lead investor, $1.5 million. And then we've realised that venture capital funds put in approximately 1% of their funds into anything to do with animal tech. Most of our shareholders are from the livestock sector, because I thought I'm going to go to our sector and see whether they're actually going to, do we really want to solve this problem? And I want to put it out there to people that we have a problem with funding the very solutions that we want because the system is not there to support it. And I would love people, not just for us, yes, we're raising money, we're ready to press the go button, and I'm struggling to get the capital, but because there's so many other amazing technologies in Australia that need shareholders who are in the industry that's going to benefit. We wait for government funds to come in and to support technology, but we've got to back our own really good ideas. And the best way to do that is, as a sector, drive the direction they go by getting involved. So I just want to really put it out there to say that technologies in Australia, we punch above our weight endlessly, but we really struggle to get the capital because when I go to the investors in the US, they think this is fantastic for a space tech that can go to all sorts of things and do all sorts of things. But agriculture, we don't understand it. So I really want to challenge our sector to go, if we want the solutions for the future, we need to actually invest in them, not just wait till they're ready to purchase them. But our technology has the capacity to do a lot more. I invented it in a way that was for pregnancy because that's what I could do the best. And I have a very, very supportive husband who didn't mind if I made them pregnant, but wasn't really keen when I asked if I could make them sick so that I could actually collect their breath and find a solution for that. But what we know is the technology is being used in humans for sickness and disease. We know that the virus for COVID is very similar to the avian influenza virus. And so now we're beginning the path of looking at what are the very broad number of diseases that we can work with that allow us to give you as a producer or me as a producer the power in your hand or linking it into infrastructure to give you continuous health data, but ones that you can make a decision based on. But now it's looking that we're pushing more into the biosecurity because we can measure so much, so rapidly and so cheaply. One of the key components of this is bovine respiratory disease. Again, it comes back to what decision can you actually make. I've never been really very interested in the technology that says your animal's sick. Yeah, probably quite a few of them are at times. What I want to know is what they're sick with so I can do something about it. So having, again, a sensor technology that can differentiate between the individual bacteria that is in bovine respiratory disease and the individual viruses is something that is a breakthrough, and we've been able to do that. That's going to take us some time to get to market, but what that does is it's shown that we're able to actually embed that in infrastructure that is where your animals are going to be. So if it's in a feedlot, it's in a feed bin to give you continuous measurement. One of the things that's been fascinating with this is learning that every cow has a different bacterial load like we do in our lungs, and it's only when that gets out of whack that you need to pay attention. So I'm a real campaigner for saying we should be providing antibiotics when we actually know that there is a real reason that that's going to do something. And to be able to differentiate between viral versus bacterial infection is really going to change things. But there is a long list of what we're going to be able to do to apply this technology to. Then we looked at, well, what about with methane then? Because what we started to see when a cow breathes out is they close their mouth when they burp, and so it all comes out their nose. So we started collecting the methane data. But for me, again, it was saying, well, as a primary producer, I want to know what the productivity options are here. I appreciate that all the supplements are coming. I got all that. But when someone said to me it was going to be $1 a day, and I'm going, what, $1,000 a day for me just to give a supplement to our animals? That's not going to strike it with me. There's two things I want to know. One is, what can I do with my own pasture? And what can I do with my own genetics? And I want to be able to do this and know what's happening with my own cattle in my own yards, because I'm sure my cattle are better than a lot of other cattle, and my grass and our pasture is really specifically done for our cattle. And I want to know what that relationship is. So what I realised was the undercurrent here is productivity and profitability, and being able to measure methane and know what's going on in our own farms is another lead indicator of feed efficiency. So rather than having a technology that was something that someone said to me once, well, it's all right, the scientists have put cows in these big containers and then they've measured those cows and they're telling us what all our cows are like. I'm like, that just doesn't add up. So what we've done here is, this is an OptiWeigh. I don't know if you guys have seen them before, mobile weigh station, plug and play, pull it out, put it there, so you get weight data and you get methane data, and we're going to load up the health sensors in this over time. The whole aim is to be able to provide continuous live data without any manning anywhere. And when I go back to this thing about encouraging you guys all to become shareholders of companies that are tech companies in Australia and back them, how we're learning about this in your environment, in the Northern Territory environment, is because one of our shareholders is one of you guys. And we've been able to go out and play and say, well, how would this work for you? What would work best for you? And how can we do this together? So the key thing here is to recognise that if you understand what's happening with methane, you're understanding what's happening with a lot. We've developed a couple of different technologies that can go anywhere, plug and play, but the key thing is, what is the value add for producers? We have 3 groups of customers, and this is that are using the technology at the moment. The first one is supplement performance evaluators, and these include people in the supply chain. One of the customer stories from this week, which was just awesome, is a company developing the methane mitigating feed additive. They're using the OptiWeigh on their yard in South Burnett region of Queensland. The trial's been showing with our technology 50% reduction in methane, but what's most exciting because of the weight piece is the cattle in the supplement have been putting on 300 grams more weight per day than the non-treatment group. Now you got my attention with methane. Yes, we have to report it up, but that's something I can do something about. In addition to that, with genetics being at up to 30% heritable, we're going through and we're beginning to look at how we can create even internal breed values on our own farm, so that we can see over time which animals, adding into the other phenotypical information that we already have, should we keep, should we breed from, and how we should do that. So genetic and phenotype evaluations are being done. They're being done in Australia and the US. Our first technology, the first one of these, went to Kansas, with the data going directly through to Walmart. They were evaluating the ability in massive feedlots to instigate a change of whole system. And the reason that our technology is useful is because it's so producer-friendly. It is a plug and play. The data is communicated seamlessly to you. It's something that you can then tie into your systems, rather than it being very researcher-focused. The researchers are using our technology too, because you have to have everything evaluated, and being able to make sure that the data that you get is really consistent and accurate is critical. But my focus is really about making sure that the technology suits the ability to have you have the evidence. So the analogy that comes back to me at times is we're all being told to reduce our speed by 50% of methane, but no speedometer for you. Just trust that somebody else will tell you by plugging that data into an algorithm, they'll tell you how you're going. I want to know how my cattle are going as this going through this, because I can change my pasture much easier than I can get a supplement out in extensive grazing. I can change my genetics over time because we do that play anyway. You get a lot of data from that's the different groups that we're working with, and it's an example of one out northern Queensland. The data that you get can help with your reporting, absolutely, but it's really skewed to be a producer panel. The evaluations are being done by Sydney University, which has found high correlation with the equivalent, which is a green feed, as long as you leave the technology for longer. And that's the whole idea, that you put this in the paddock and you get the data as you need to do. We are working with a great number of people. But our technology that I really want to inspire you is that the technologies that we're developing for cattle are really not limited to just cattle. Old MacDonald had a whole farm, and this is all about transforming the whole livestock sector. And I just want to say that with technology from space and technology from elsewhere, we can bring this into our environments to be able to do the most amazing things going forward and get information you never thought possible. But to do that, we all need to work together to know which problems we should solve with new technologies as radical as this. And we can't do that in isolation. So I just wanted to thank the Northern Territory Cattle Association for allowing me to come and to be part of this, because it gives me an opportunity to go, tell me which diseases, tell me which way we should point this new digital camera, because the future is unbelievably exciting. But it won't be something that I think that should be pushed onto us. I want everyone in the room and everyone who's watching the other room to be able to help us do this in a way that gives the best productivity and the best profitability outcome. It is also a lot of fun. NASA's told us very clearly that we are now pushing agriculture into a new space. And that is where the development that I can do with this technology is now driving what is happening in human medicine. Because our ability to test and refine the sensors in crazy environments, like in the middle of a fire, a bushfire, or in such torrential rain, is enabling the technology for humans to be utilised in really wild places. So we have an opportunity to be the drivers of amazing technological change because our sector is special. So please come and talk to me about what you think about what we're doing. I really want to know the direction we should point this camera, how we should do that. We are trying to, not just for us, last year was a horrendous year for any ag tech in Australia raising capital. Let's not wait for the government to get around to this. Our sector can invest, become shareholders, help drive this. For those you know are developing technology that you think is important, please get involved and put your money in there and become a shareholder, because you will make a difference that will end up going much broader than our just sector in Australia. So thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference.